Hello, I'm Kat Keane, Health Educator at Arthritis New South Wales, and in this episode of Empowering You, I will be talking to you about how to identify fake science. So I'm just going to share my screen with you, so bear with me as I do that. And the whole point of this presentation is to help empower you by informing you about fake science so that you can make better informed decisions about products, treatment, and management options out there for arthritis. So, identifying fake science. We're going to talk about what it is, the warning signs, why we are drawn to fake science, commonplace pitfalls in reasoning, the dangers of fake science, and what are reliable resources. First of all, what is fake science, or also known as pseudoscience? Firstly, it's a set of claims that seem scientific, but not. Essentially, it lacks the safeguards against confirmation bias and belief perseverance, of which characterize science or the scientific method. So, confirmation bias is a bias in which people seek out and recall information that supports their preconceived beliefs. And then belief perseverance is the rejection of information that could disprove beliefs. So in the scientific method, there are controls for these and safeguards against these. However, in pseudoscience, there isn't. So it can be very difficult to wade your way through what's really truth or what's actually quite biased. So here are some of the warning signs of pseudoscience. There are many more out there. However, these are some of the most common. And just because a claim has one of these signs doesn't mean that it all the way is pseudoscience, but it's certainly helping you to be more aware of the signs. The first one is using exaggerated claims. An example here could be 3 simple steps to change your love life forever. Love is certainly not simple, it's rather complex. And certainly 3 steps to change your love life sounds pretty good. In fact, it sounds a little bit too good to be true. So be aware of exaggerated claims. They're likely there to draw you in. Over-reliance on anecdotes. So this is just an example, and I rather like yoga, and I tell people to do it if they need to, but I'll just use it as an example. So a lady I know practiced yoga daily for 3 weeks and hasn't had pain since. So somebody could hear that from a friend of a friend and go, oh, that person said it works for them, then it must work for me. And that's not always the case. The third one being lack of peer review or replication by independent labs. So an example could be from a company or a lab, 50 studies conducted by the one company all show overwhelming success, which is pretty difficult and rare to achieve. If you're really following the regiment and strictness of the scientific method, you'll likely find that your results will be mixed. There'll be non-significant and significant results in your data, and it'll be unlikely to find overwhelming success. Science is definitely not that easy. So be aware of that. Also, there is a lack of self-correction, using fancy words, using the word proof instead of evidence, and we'll have a talk about those things later. So why are we so drawn to pseudoscience? There are a number of reasons why we are, but basically it stems from how our brains work. Essentially, a pseudoscientific claim will actually, it might be really quite simple. It might sound really logical as well. And essentially, we're predisposed to making order out of disorder or finding sense in nonsense. So a really simple claim or a really logical claim could really make sense, and then we're so easily drawn to it to believe it. And in that sense, it's an adaptive tendency. Again, it helps us simplify things that go on in the world. An example of that could be either something really good or something really bad happening, and us saying, well, everything happens for a reason. That saying is great. However, it's really a saying that just helps us make sense of the situation. It doesn't mean that it's right, though, because it can lead us astray. It can cause us to perceive meaningful patterns when there really isn't anything there at all. So some commonplace pitfalls in reasoning. Number one is a logical fallacy. So these is a trap in thinking that can lead to mistaken conclusions. So deducing that two truths imply a third truth. And an example of that could be is the process of coming to the conclusion of who stole a cookie based on who was in the room at the time. So sometimes it's really just not that easy as person A and person B was in the room, so it must be one of those two. Sometimes that's just not the case. Emotional reasoning fallacy. This is the error of using our emotions as a guide for evaluating the validity of a claim. That one can be really difficult to see past. So to see past our own emotional bias can be really, really difficult. Bandwagon fallacy. So this is the error of assuming a claim is correct just because many people believe it. So this is like the example that I used before about yoga, sort of those anecdotal claims. So if a lot of people are saying that it works, well, then it must work for me. And that's just not always the case. It might, but it's just not always the case. The not me fallacy. So it's an error of believing we are immune from thinking errors. And the bias blind spot fallacy is a lack of awareness of our own biases coupled with an awareness of other people's bias. So we're not biased, but other people are. So again, just try to be open-minded, okay? Open-minded to things. You can try different things, but certainly it's best to base your opinions and the actions that you do and choose to take on a scientific basis. So what are the dangers of pseudoscience? Well, one is cost. So people can spend a lot of time and money and effort in obtaining a questionable treatment, and then they may forfeit the chance to obtain a treatment that actually works. A direct harm, so direct physical or mental harm. So if you've delayed mainstream treatment, you may worsen your condition in doing the things that I mentioned above, such as spending the time and the effort and the money and trying to look into alternatives. So some pseudoscientific treatments occasionally can cause harm. So for example, some complementary medicines, so herbs or extracts, vitamins or minerals, some of them don't have established doses, and some can have actual drug interactions. So it's really important to be aware of that and just to consult your GP or your healthcare professional if you are going to take the complementary medicines. Not to say that they aren't needed, of course. For example, I'm iron deficient, so I'm taking an iron supplement. That's okay. But if you're not necessarily deficient in a particular vitamin or mineral, then you don't need to take a vitamin or mineral. So scientific skepticism, that's what I urge us all to have and do and believe in. People certainly believe that it implies a closed-mindedness, but rather it actually means to consider carefully. So evaluate all claims with an open mind, but insist on persuasive evidence before accepting them. And the scientific thinking is critical in the fight against pseudoscience. Although the scientific method is far from foolproof, it certainly is our best safeguard against errors we are all prone to. So how do you consider how reliable a source is? I used to teach this acronym. I'm not being rude when I say CRAP, but CRAP is an acronym for currency, relevance, authority, accuracy, and purpose. So the first one is looking at the timeliness of the info, and I have a really great example of that coming up shortly. So is the information current or is it out of date, especially for the topic that you're researching, for example? Anything in the last 5 to 10 years is is current, but anything probably later than 10 years, especially in the medical field, is likely to be older and not so current, not so up to date. So just be aware of that. Have a look at the date as to when things were published. The more recent, likely, the better and reliable the information is. Relevance, so how the info fits your needs. It's the importance of the information for your needs. Have you looked at a variety of sources before determining if this one is right for you? A is for authority, so the source of the information. So who is the author, the publisher, the source, the sponsor? That's really important to look whether there is any body such as a sponsor or somebody who's supporting a study, for example, with a lot of money, as that may bias particular outcomes and results. We're going to have a look and talk about authors in a little bit. The next one is currency. So, is accuracy, reliability, and the correctness of the information. So looking at truthfulness in this regard. So where does information come from? Is it from a website or a blog newspaper, or is it from a peer-reviewed professional journal? Is the information supported by evidence? And if so, what kind of evidence? And has the information been reviewed or refereed? That's also another important point. If it's been reviewed and refereed, as in it's been peer reviewed, then that's a very good sign that it's hopefully going to be reliable and telling you the truth as per the scientific evidence. And then the last one, P, for purpose. That's the reason the information exists. So is the information fact or opinion? Is it in regard to the current times? Is it there to persuade or bias you? Does the point of view appear to be objective or impartial? Is there a hidden agenda? Are there political, ideological, cultural, religious, or other personal biases? So just being aware of those things. Can you try and take a step back and look objectively and weigh up all the opinions and all the options? I've got two examples of fake science or pseudoscience, and one is actually particularly current. This one was on a current affair. It's episode 74. I've got the link there, though you likely can't click on it, but you can have a look at it. You can look it up, that's for sure. This was from 2020, and it's about a particular product. Now, they've likely changed. They've likely changed their website since being on a current affair, but this was all about a particular vitamin. And we're looking at bergamot met, and it's apparently it's a supplement, and apparently it's supposed to be really good for supporting your immune system. However, what they've done here is they've mentioned that it can help fight against or prevent such pathogens such as the SARS and COVID-19. Which is a fairly big claim. And so I'd like to bring in some of the information that I've just been talking about, for example, currency. So looking at the timeliness of this particular ad. While this product has been around for a while, it certainly hasn't looked at the product and tested it against, for example, SARS and COVID-19. It just hasn't. And so essentially this product is capitalizing on the current situation and probably people's fears about wanting to remain healthy, and that anything that boosts their immune system will then inadvertently help them fight against SARS or COVID-19. And it's just not true. So basically what they've done is they've taken already pre-existing claims from their own clinical trials, and then they've just transferred them into the current times and applied them to COVID-19. And that's just not how science works. what you would need to do is have the product use a double-blinded randomized controlled trial, so intervention-based study, people not on the supplement, people on the supplement, and then expose them to whatever the pathogen was. And that just simply isn't the case. The last clinical trial was 2016. So certainly not the case. And because it's sort of capitalized on the current time, so the currency, it's then also, people then would likely fall victim to their emotional fallacy. So, you know, a state of fear, for example, and wanting to remain fit and healthy, then that will bias them going, I'm going to do whatever I can to remain fit and healthy. And this product said that it can fight against SARS and it has to fight against COVID-19 and help my immune system, which just isn't the case. Another one that's more relative to arthritis is these particular ads that pop up on the internet. So if you're looking up something, you might have typed in treatments or management options or something like this for arthritis, and it's in your algorithm, and likely you'll see these sorts of things popping up, and they pop up all the time for me as well. Sorry. So this picture pops up. First of all, this is an emotional visual. It's a visual emotional trigger. So again, this pulls on your emotional fallacy strings. I want my knee to look like the picture on the left. I do not want it to look like the picture on the right. The right picture looks scary. It looks painful. I definitely don't want to move that knee. And I definitely don't want my knee to turn out like that. So, hey, I'm going to click on it to see what I can do about it, basically, what this product's saying that it can do for me. Which then brings me to the second thing here. It says that has exaggerated claims like 5 herbs that stop knee pain, for example, and doctor reveals 1 weird compound to relieve knee pain that may surprise you. So these are exaggerated claims. They're likely too good to be true. And number 3, they're using fancy, catchy, and credible type words. And that would be that there's a doctor thrown in there, the word doctor. And of course, you know, we believe our doctors, or we should trust in our doctors. And so if you throw the word doctor in there, then it's somewhat credible. Weird compounds, and that may surprise you. 5 herbs, oh, it sounds natural. I might give that a go. And this is where people enter that game where they start trying lots of different types of treatment methods and supplements, for example. Now, I'm not saying that they may not work. I'm just saying that this is fake science. This is pseudoscience right here in the making in front of you. And you can now see how it pulls you in. And just to be aware of it next time. So having a look at reliable sources, and then I'm going to talk about the sources that we use at Arthritis New South Wales. So a reliable source is one that provides a thorough, unbiased, well-reasoned theory, argument, or discussion, and it's based on strong scientific evidence. So the number 1 pick when you want a reliable resource and reliable information is scholarly, peer-reviewed articles or books. And the most reliable source in this category here would be peer-reviewed and systematic reviews. So a systematic review is a couple of authors, usually likely professionals in the field, researchers themselves perhaps, and they do a review of all the literature out there. And they put it against certain rigorous criteria in terms of the scientific method. They look at the collective evidence and they come up with basically a blanket answer. And usually, well, hopefully it's always unbiased. They just try to look at it from an objective point of view. So that's where you want to go. You want to find, you know, peer-reviewed professional journals, research studies, and things like that are the top source. The second one is professional books or articles, and these may be written by professionals themselves, practitioners in the field, experts in the field, and they are used to impart practice-orientated information. Now, you would think information from an expert should be up there with the top tier reliable information, and it is. It's just, again, because it's coming from a person, and unfortunately people are flawed, and while we might be speaking from a good place, we still have our opinions and we still have our biases, and that's why it comes second best to the scientific method, which we hope is unbiased and governed by the scientific method itself. The third is magazine articles, books, newspaper articles, even from well-established newspapers. So these are things that are written for the general audience by authors or journalists who have consulted reliable resources. And again, here comes more opinion. So the more diluted it becomes with opinion, the less reliable it becomes. That's not to say you can't get good information, but we all know what social media can do when it comes to the news. And the last one being websites and blogs. So some can be reliable and some are very unreliable. Here's where hoaxes are born and misinformation, basically. So that should be, that's the bottom tier. That actually doesn't even deserve a medal. So just check the resources and the reliability of those resources and where you're getting that information from. Have you cross-checked it? Asking around is fine to do so, as long as you don't jump on that bandwagon, for example, as long as you're not being misguided by anecdotes, for example. Ask around for different types of information, advice, and then research into it. Okay, that then brings us to the end. There's a whole heap of references there. I hope that you have enjoyed this Empowering You episode. And if you have any questions, any queries that you'd like, anything that I've touched on in this episode that you'd like more information on, please shoot me an email or write it in the comments and I'll do my best to get back to you. Okay, thank you. Bye.